has the ability to make quite a significant difference to the supply of good quality pitches for travellers in the district. Together, if you approve, we will have 11 more pitches. As you know, the new traveller accommodation assessment establishes a quite high level of need for no less than 127 pitches in Huntingdonshire, 36 in the first 5 years. So granting permission for the 11 we are seeking permanent permission for will make a big contribution to the 36 needed for the first 5 years. I would also stress something that Lewis brought out in his comments, that the site provides particularly good quality accommodation. Mr. Adams, I've got 30 seconds. 50. And his family live on the site and manage it well. The site is spacious and well landscaped. There are plans for a children's play area, which we will implement if we get.
Sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there because you have had over your 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm
you.
not known for being.
Thank you. You can stay there because some of our councillors may have a question for you. Have any of our councillors got a question for this particular speaker? No, there are no questions. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. So that moves us on to questions of clarification for our planning officers. Are there any questions of clarification for our planning officers on this application? Councillor McAdam.
Thank you, Chair. I have read all the notes. I might have missed it. The objection about people walking into the village, safety, that aspect. Could I have some clarification on that, please?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So this application is a Section 73. So we're not revisiting the principle of the original consent. We're just looking at the issue of flood risk in this case. Those issues were previously raised on the appeal and the subsequent application, which is next on the agenda for that original one. And the inspector confirmed that that was acceptable. In terms of it, there are facilities and stuff in Somersham, but in terms of the policy, the Gypsy and Traveller policy, it does allow for sites to be in the countryside, and a lot of those times you're not going to have direct access through a path or cycle path. But in this case, what members are looking at tonight is the flood risk issue, not going back to the principle of the original issue.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Pitt.
Thank you. So I'm just sort of refamiliarising myself, looking at my notes that I made on the agenda. So it's come to us because the parish council has recommended refusal. I can't find, as I sit here, the detail of what that refusal is on the basis of. Could you guide me to the right paragraph or fill in some information?
Sure, through you, Chair. So it's paragraph 5.1. Somersham Parish Council objects. Permitted use was passed for family members only. The applicant has now applied for the 5-year limit to be removed and for the access to the site to be upgraded. Somersham Parish Council agreed that if these are going to be permanent sites, they are therefore not operating as per the site requirements under planning policy. It is also dangerous for pedestrians walking into the village from the site. I think even if the parish council wasn't objecting, officers would have brought this, given that the previous application has been to committee, so therefore it's bringing it back to members for consideration.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of clarification for the planning officer? Councillor Wakeford.
Sorry, I think you've clarified this, but I suppose for avoidance of doubt, as we lead into debate, it doesn't strike me that there is any grounds of objection material to the scope of decision that we've got to make tonight raised from the parish council. I think there haven't been any other representations, if I've read correctly. Is that right, or are there arguments material to flood risk that have been raised on behalf of objectors or the parish council that I'm not spotting.
So you're correct. So the parish council haven't raised anything in regards to flood risk, which is the main issue for consideration here. So just to be clear, the reason why the inspector allowed the site on a temporary basis was due to flood risk. So that is the core consideration. Highway safety is kind of a subsection, I'd say, simply because they're looking to vary that condition. But highways have agreed for a 6-month extension on that. But the main issue tonight is flood risk, and no, the parish council have not raised anything in relation to that. And there's no third party reps either in relation to this application.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of clarification before we move on? So now we'll move on to the debate. Are there any councillors that wish to start that? Councillor McAdam, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Given that the main problem here is flood risk, and reading the report, the requirements of sequential testing have been met, I see no reason at all why this why we shouldn't agree the officer's decision tonight. So therefore, I'm happy to propose this if anybody wants to second it. Thank you.
Councillor Wakeford.
I concur with Councillor McAdam. I struggle to see any credible ground for refusal here. Won't waste any more words other than to say I'll second that proposal.
Thank you very much. I'll take that as a proposal and seconded. Is there anyone that wants to contribute to the discussion before we go to a vote? No? So we'll go to a vote. All those in favour of approval, please raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12.
And therefore that is unanimous and has been approved. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is 3C, which again is in Somersham and will be dealt with by our planning officer, Lewis Tomlinson.
Thank you, Chair. So as these applications are quite similar, I'm just going to focus on the difference of this application from the last. I won't go back over. So this application relates to the western element of the site. Oh, sorry, let me rewind. So the proposal is seeking the removal of conditions 1, 5-year time limit, 5, permanent pitches, 6, 90 days, 7, transient pitches, and variation of condition 10, access. You can see the site location plan in front of you. I'll just go back to the aerial just more for context. So this application relates to the western element of the site, which also benefits from a 5-year temporary planning permission for 7 pitches. This followed the appeal decision on the central part of the site, and this is the one that members saw last year following that appeal decision. Let me just skip to the relevant part. So given that the site is recommended to become permanent and will no longer have a personal consent attached to it, it's considered that any of the pitches on the site will be able to accommodate permanent gypsy and traveller pitches or those looking for a transient pitch. Therefore, those conditions relating to transient pitches are to be removed, with additional conditions regarding the evacuation plan and 6 months to complete access improvement works. So the recommendation is the same as the previous application to make this permanent planning permission, subject to a definition of gypsy and traveller. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We will move on to speakers. We have one speaker on this particular application, which is Frederick Adams, who is the applicant. So welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. And you have 3 minutes in which to address the councillors. When you're ready, if you press the middle button on the microphone, and hopefully the microphone should turn red.
Everybody hear me okay? First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for your support this evening for the previous application. I've been running this site and living here for the last nearly 20 years, I suppose, and it's been a long journey for us. We've worked with the council as much as we could. informed them with everything that we've been doing. I'd just like to thank you very much for your support. I am a man of my word. My main reason for speaking tonight was I did mention to some of the councillors here that I would get this entranceway done before, within a year. But I've been trying my hardest to get it done. But I've literally got some paperwork through today that should hopefully enable the Highways Department to approve our scheme, because you have to have what's called a 278 agreement. But I think we should have that through now, so there shouldn't be any problems. So that was really what I wanted to clarify, that I am a trustworthy person, and I do really try to follow on. If I give a commitment to somebody, I like to follow it through. Like I say, we are considered a model site. I try to run a tight ship and manage it very well. And we've got our waste disposal areas that are collected fortnightly. And we do really try hard to make it nice. And I intend to make Somersham Legacy Park a model site for other people to look at and hopefully, following suit. So, so thank you very much. But if there's anybody who wants to ask me anything, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. But
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this particular speaker? Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you for coming in, addressing us this evening. I suppose my question, which if officers feel isn't strictly material to the decision, I trust they'll stop me, is simply to just flag. I think I've understood correctly that the recommendation here is for a 6-month access, a 6-month window for implementing the access, rather than the 18 months applied for. From what was just said, I think I've understood that you feel that's deliverable, that's realistic. Have I understood correctly, albeit I'm conscious that we're making a decision on what's before us, separate to then enforcement, but wonder if that's helpful to speak to.
So if I could come in there, Chair, just for clarity. So the application was seeking 18 months just to change from the original condition, which pretty much is around the same as the 6-month granted on this. So there's not any real difference apart from the wording of the condition, but Highways are happy with that. And like the applicant said, progression's being made on the works anyway. So yeah, in terms of the difference, it's the same thing really. 18 or 6 months, from 18 from the original consent or 6 months from this one.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the speaker? No questions. So thank you very much for addressing us this evening.
thank you very much. Thank you.
We will move on to questions of clarification for our planning officers. Are there any councillors that have a question of clarification? No questions of clarification, so we'll move on to the debate. Who would like to start that debate for me? Councillor Wakeford, thank you.
Only in absence of other hands around the table, Chair. Clearly work has been undertaken to get us to the point of a recommendation here. A lot of officer time and I dare say applicant time has been spent on this, so it's no sort of diminution or disrespect to that amount of work to reach a decision rather swiftly. But as on the previous application, though this is a distinct application that we're thinking about separately, I struggle to see lawful grounds for refusal. So I would be happy at this early stage in debate to propose we adopt the officer recommendation of acceptance.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brereton.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with our colleague here. I will second the motion.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors that wish to speak in the debate before we move on? So we will move on to the vote. We've got a proposal of approval from Councillor Wakeford, which has been seconded by Councillor Brereton. All those in favour of approval, please raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
That is unanimous and has been approved. We'll just have a few moments before we move on to the next item on the agenda. To item 4 on the agenda, which is the Planning Service Peer Review Action Plan. And we have our change project lead to go through this with us.
Thank you very much. We've brought this back to you to provide the committee with an update on the Planning Service peer review and the action plan associated with it. Obviously, the plan's been developed in response to the findings of the review, looking at setting out the key improvements that are currently being progressed across the service. Really, this was here to inform you, so help you understand and see the current red, amber, green status, provide feedback on the process and the progress of the actions that are currently taking place, and to invite you as members to take note of the action plan and to offer any comments or observations that you see from your readings of it. And this will come back periodically to you for feedback and observations.
So I'll open it up to councillors. If you have any questions or you have any feedback regarding the peer action plan, this is your opportunity. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair, and well done, Greg and the team, for putting all this together. Peer review started probably longer than I care to remember the process, and it has been a living document, and it's good to see it all sort of in one sort of group of pages. So I think really for me the two key things are scheme of delegation, because we often come here, don't we, as part of the process, and some people are, perhaps don't appreciate when DMC is used and when it's not. And I think the other thing is sort of smarter ways of working. Our team are small, but they're very efficient at what they do. They're very good at what they do. Because we know planning professionals are in short supply, but with the process, the industry, if you like, is expanding, particularly with the changes that the central government have brought in. So they're the two standout things here for me, and I'm pleased to see that they're highlighted in quite a prominent way. I think the other thing for us as members to consider is training, because we do get very complete reports, very thorough, a lot of document, a lot of detail in there. But of course, legislation is changing, MPPF, etc. So important that I think we stay as current as we possibly can, along with our parish council colleagues as well, who of course are an important part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that we have some training coming up, so that's great. Is there any other feedback or any questions? Councillor Dew.
Just feedback. It's good to see a RAG report that comes in where we've got mostly green, light green and amber. We've seen too many over the years, not from planning necessarily, but from elsewhere, where there's been a lot of reds and yellows where things either haven't started or haven't progressed. So well done on getting so much of the work well down the path. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you. Actually, on the same topic, I was as I began to look at it, I always think of amber as being sort of becoming slightly behind schedule rather than, and actually I've found the key at the bottom of the document. That I'm just wondering, are there any things on here that are kind of slipping behind where we'd like them to be, or is it more just a sort of a status report? I've got another question, but I'll pause.
I think I would say it's more, I don't think things are slipping, any of it is slipping behind. It's more just an update. Some have been started and are further down the track than others. I think that's fair. But almost everything is at the very least underway or has been scoped and is progressing. As you know, process can take time within the council. So we are working within that constraint slightly. and some things move slightly quicker than others. But other than that, no, everything is go and has started.
Thank you very much. Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just wondered how you're getting on with the LPAG. I mean, it says in here the makeup of the group. To be honest, that it all needs looking at. It's very, very low key. You know, poor attendance. I'm not suggesting Doug because he's had operation knee and whatnot, but we're quite thin on the ground sometimes, and it's a little bit disappointing. I know everybody has meetings, you know, other meetings and one thing and another, and we're meeting now every week, which, you know, you've got to be, if you want to do this right, we've got to be committed. And, you know, we could do, I don't know whether the makeup is good enough there, you know, whether there's enough. And the only other point that I'd like to make is, has anything been done about if we turn an officer's recommendation down and go to appeal? The last one I'd done, I had to write it myself, and the peer review group was amazed that that was the format we're using. I just wondered whether anything's been done on that, because in previous times, an officer wrote up the appeal for the members that you know, objected to the application. So just those two items, you know, see if you can help me on those.
Thank you for that. So with reference to LPAG, yeah, it's been noted. Obviously, the makeup was created earlier on in the year, which is set for that period of time. But the things such as attendance have been noted, and we are going to work towards how to encourage attendance. I'm trying to think of the nicest way to put that. You're right. It needs to be attended well to get the right cross-section to make sure that it's doing what it should. So it has been noted, and going forward, there will be potentially some changes, etc. to it. We don't have the specifics at the minute, but it's certainly been noted, and you're right in what you're saying.
Still you, Chair. In terms of the other point you mentioned, Councillor Butler, in terms of the planning appeals, I mean, it's something we are looking at. However, it probably should be noted that certainly for myself, speaking to 7 other chief planning officers across back end of last week and earlier on this morning, a number of them are adopting that approach now. And if anything, it's more, there's less in the less of a group of authorities that actually do adopt that approach to officers writing the report if it's been a member over 10 than not. So basically more are getting on the stream in terms of asking or relying upon members to actually input into that actual statement. It's not writing it from scratch. Obviously, there'll still be some officer steer on it in terms of it looks about right if you feel that's enough, but in terms of the writing it, in terms of the saying what the RTPI expect of their officers, it's difficult for a professional officer that's RTPI accredited to then change their mind on appeal. That's the main thrust of it, where a lot of authorities seem to be taking that stance now.
Yeah, just may come back, Jim. Yeah, I understand that, and it may put members off refusing an application, say, you know, if they think, well, I've got to go to appeal and stand by my decision, which is not been a problem with me, but it may put other members off. So I'm not saying that the officer that wrote up the original recommendation should then readdress it if it gets turned down. But in previous times, another officer has written up what's required for the appeal.
Councillor Dew.
Yeah, just picking up on the back of that, I think that's prone to problems, having taken a few through in the past with the officer support. the officers weren't actually writing up and saying what their opinion was. They were just making sure we gave proper legal planning weight to what went in. Surely if me and Eric and various others are bundling in as a layman in that point of view, we expose ourselves not only to the possibility of losing appeals, but actually because they're not properly structured, leaving ourselves open to quite severe costs. So we ought to consider that as part of this process. It's not good enough to just say, oh, we can't support you, but it leaves the council overall open to costs. So I think we ought to consider it. And sometimes it's just a matter of getting the wording right. I know when we take, not just here, but at work, when I've taken stuff through courts, you get barristers to put wordings around things, even though when you know you may not win, but it gives the weight to show that you've given it, due consideration. So I think, if you could give some thought on that, because I think Eric's right. I don't mind writing my own up, but we do need some support to make sure we don't leave ourselves in the black hole. Because if I'm going up against a barrister, as I have done at work a couple of times, I think I'm a bright lad and I get in front of a barrister and get ripped apart in about 30 seconds. And then 2 hours later, they come back to the same thing and rip me apart again. So we need that support. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying we want you to agree with our opinion, but to make sure that our opinion is properly legally worded around the planning framework. I think that's what we want, isn't it, Eric?
If I could, Chair, just for you. So I think we're all in agreement here. It's just what Sean was saying is that officers wouldn't take on the task of then creating the reasons for refusal and defending the appeal. But officers, of course, would always be there to support members. But the reasoning why you would then be looking to take it to appeal would come from members themselves. But we would obviously seek to guide you through policy, legislation, etc. But I think there's just a clear difference on us in a supporting role to then leading on the appeal. For the simple reason, if officer recommendation is to approve something and members wish to refuse it, the officer recommendation normally is a collective decision. It's not just one officer out there. It's managers have signed off on it. But yeah, we'd always be there to support you. So,
if I may, Chair, no, that's good to hear, because we're not questioning your professional opinion on it. Because you make your professional opinion, you've got to stand on it. You can't go changing it. We're just asking for the support to make sure that we as councillors don't leave the council exposed when they don't need to be. And I think what you just said there, Lewis, gives me comfort on that. So I'm happy. Thank you, mate.
And sorry, just both Councillor Butler and Councillor Juice to pick up on that point. Sorry, I wasn't quite clear. We always provide that support and feedback. And obviously, when it gets to a point of it, if it is, for example, a public inquiry, once we engage external legal advice, a barrister to go through it or represent the authority, be the advocate within for the authority, if at that point the barrister comes back and says that there is an issue, hypothetically, with that reasoning, or there's no valid justification for that, that's a discussion we will have. Time permitting, we may well ask members' input on that, and we may get to a situation where we decide not to move forward at a public inquiry. So there always is that. Whether that's an officer writing it, whether it's, for example, a snapshot in time, if the officers and the consultees come back and form an opinion, that's then refused. So it's nothing to do with the member overturned, it's refused. When it goes to that public inquiry, if the sands have changed, the ground's moved underneath them, you do get quite often a situation where one or more reasons for refusal, if there are multiple, are withdrawn. So basically, you would then focus on one key issue or two key issues. Or if you're in the unenviable position where all of the reasons for refusal have evaporated, then obviously it's key to advise members and or the authority's position to ensure that we try and put the best case forward. And if the case isn't there, we've got to admit that quite quickly. So it is a moving buffet, as it were, moving feast. So obviously, at any point in time, it can change. So just to give the reassurance, we would always be there to give that advice that this may not be the correct angle, or if we get that point back from the KC that that's the case, then obviously we'll within those discussions with you as well.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson and then Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just a quick final point on this. I mean, let's remember that our colleagues have their own professional standards. They have to be qualified like any professional. They have to meet those standards in their profession. So it's difficult when we go against an officer recommendation, not saying it can't happen. Of course it can. It's a democratic process, but it's obviously difficult if you've written a report and you've said in your professional opinion, this should be approved, for example, and members are saying, well, we don't agree and we want you to basically argue the other way. So I think Sean's got it right that you can assist, but obviously it's really for members to manage that process as best they can as well. going forward. It's a dilemma, isn't it? You obviously want to be helpful, but you obviously have to meet your own sort of professional levels. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. I certainly don't want to prolong the discussion we've just had, and I concur with Councillor Sanderson, who I think was largely concurring with colleagues around the table as well on that. I'm obviously familiar with the context of that discussion. I just wonder, for my, for completeness, if officers could refer me to which particular recommendation number that pertained to, the discussion around support through appeals, because I couldn't immediately remind myself looking through the table. But I've obviously re-skimmed it that little bit quickly. The more substantive question I was going to ask was similar to where Councillor Pitt picked up earlier, looking at sort of time scales and things. There are different and differently specific, for understandable reasons, linked to the actions, timeframes given here. They all look to be in the coming few months. I suppose my sort of basic question would be, is there anything on here that you don't think it's reasonable for us to expect to happen in a reasonable period of time, which I might define as, say, the remainder of this municipal year, for example?
So to answer both them questions, probably the first one would be around, where does the previous conversation fit into the recommendation? I don't think it's a particular point. I think it might come under training, if you wanted to clarify in that, but I don't think it does fit under a particular point, and just so you don't spend too long looking. With regards to timescales, yeah, I mean, some of them are indicative timescales. They're what we're estimating and hoping to achieve. Some of the ones that are further down the line are certainly on track to hit that. Some that say, for example, spring, or we're not quite on a date for them. There are different processes involved that we're trying to navigate and work our way through with the council, as you know. But that being said, I think everything in there has what I would think of as realistic and genuine opportunity to be achieved by them moments.
That's really helpful, if I may say, Chair. And if essentially we think it's realistic for this to be closed down within the current municipal year, then I think we can probably let slide the slightly informal language in the next steps section of the paper. If this were to be going into a new council session as well, I suppose for formality's sake, in view of our current constitutional structure, the actions would be around a portfolio holder engaging across political groups, as well as with the DMC, as well as with DMC members, rather than the, as I say, informal reference to shadow portfolio holder in the singular. But we all know what's meant by that.
Thank you. Councillor Tevlin, did you?
Thanks, Chair. I may have missed it on the schedule, but I'd like to know, when we came in 2022, that there was a big backlog of cases, whether it's on here or not. Is there an update of where things are in terms of the backlog versus cases coming in and staffing? Thank you.
Just in terms of that, I'll try and take it within the order that was asked. In terms of the backlog, yes, there's been significant inroads to that. I know Councillor Sanderson gets a report beginning of every month for the previous month. Apologies, August is coming. In terms of where we've got to now, we are on track. I think at the end of the financial year, it was going to be the target was to be in low single digits. We are hovering around the 30, 32 mark, which is basically where we envisaged would be at this time during the calendar year. So we are making inroads towards that. In terms of the staffing levels, which are obviously intrinsically linked to this, we have currently brought 2 more contractors in, one to fill the secondment. One of the officers has been seconded to the NSIP officer position. There also is an officer that's on
a period of absence from the office. So we've also brought in a senior to replace that. We are currently we have been currently advertising for a planning officer position, a DMO, Development Management Officer position. We are looking at conducting those interviews within the next fortnight. So we have had a number of applicants apply for that, and we have shortlisted that. Those applicants will be interviewed within the next fortnight. So we're hoping to appoint, subject to their notice period. So you could be looking at a month or 2 months. And after that point, effectively, albeit those people from the substantive positions that aren't in the office at the moment, we will have a full complement of staff at that point. We have been dealing with some absences, both within the planning officer position and the support team, and as well as the specialist team as well, enforcement, conservation, and so forth. So it is a little bit of a roller coaster at the moment, but we are getting there.
Thank you. Councillor Pitt, then Councillor Mockball.
Thank you. The risk of dragging out Councillor Butler's point even further. So I'm surprised that didn't come up in the peer review, because I know it came up in the discussions, the workshops, quite a lot actually. And if it is just a training issue, certainly my understanding going through the induction when I joined this committee is quite different from the far more nuanced position that's been described now. So I'm really keen that we don't lose sight of bottoming that out and making sure that all councillors are really fully informed about what that process looks like, because what we want to avoid is any decision being influenced by repercussions of, you know, like the committee should make decision based on the information and not any other residual things that might be on their minds. Thank you. So on that point, and then I was just interested to know, so the review/change of no amendments policy, it looks like there's some work being done on that, which is great. I'm just interested to know what influencing factors are driving that discussion and where it's headed.
I'll take this one. So in terms of that, like we said, there's a number of projects on the go. Obviously, business as usual as well needs to take place. So the no amendments review, obviously that was brought in at a time when we had a backlog, we were short staffed. It was there to kind of allow us to start getting through applications. Obviously, time has moved on. In terms of the peer review, the general kind of theme in one of the, I could guess like a generic theme in there, is around income generation and looking at whether we should charge for amendments. So officers are currently undertaking some work. Members will be aware that a paper went to full council in July this year around discretionary fees within planning. And one of the things raised was charging for amendments. There's obviously pros and cons to that. Like, for example, we could, people submitting applications will then be clear on whether they are allowed an amendment and what the cost would be and what rules there are. So there is work being undertaken. Obviously, we will speak to Councillor Sanderson, and obviously comms will go out. But stuff like that requires a form. We have to look at benchmarking against other authorities, and there's comms plans around it. But that's making progression, and that would be in line with what the peer review states.
Have you got a follow-on question?
Just a really quick comment. And I think that sounds really sensible. I think the no amendments policy obviously helps with the backlog, but I think we get better quality decisions if we do have a system for allowing amendments. So I'm really glad to hear that's moving forwards.
Thank you, Councillor Mockball.
Thank you. I would just like to see a separate heading for what Councillor Butler was talking about. So a separate heading on the peer review to talk about the training specifically for appeals. I know Lewis gave us plenty of opportunity to go and see appeals, but you know, sometimes you're just not free and can't make it. But I'd like to see a separate heading for that, please.
Should we do more targeted training session on it, on appeals, just reasons for refusal, implications of costs? Would that be helpful? Yeah. To wrap it up into a training session? Okay. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Wakeford.
Yeah, picking up Councillor Mockball's point, I think we can't change the recommendations made to us because they were made by peers externally, of course, but presumably reference in our actions under the training box to Lewis's suggestion taking place, for example, would be a way of giving visibility to there having been a piece of work on this. As Councillor Peters rightly said, it's come up in a number of contexts over a period of time, and it's right we ensure clear understanding about it.
Are there any other questions or feedback? Oh, Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Chair. Just one item that I'm looking at, improve pre-app advice. Now, I don't know whether that's anything to do with us, but obviously this is going to come back to us. And how are you or we going to measure the success or, the changes that have been made to obviously improve it?
So in regards to the pre-application advice, we relaunched it in 2022. That was after a period of it not being active, mainly for COVID and kind of we're carrying a few vacancies. So there wasn't the capacity to deliver it. So when we delivered it, we always said we'd come back and review it. In terms of the pre-app, just if we look at kind of financial, it's been successful. It's brought in a decent amount of income each year. That's helped obviously fund parts of the department. I think we are mindful that the pre-application has a few kind of holes in it in terms of what people look for. We're basically either losing money in terms of sending them down one route or losing money because we don't have a certain option available. I think some of the time scales are a bit too tight for providing responses. So really it's a process that's working because it's bringing in income, but it could definitely be kind of fine-tuned. So that's the work we're undertaking. For example, we've already taken a load of workshops with teams. We also discussed it at the recent Agents Forum and had feedback. So we just need to sit down and look through that data. I think it's one of the longer projects just because of the moving parts around it. There's a web form, somebody needs to build that. We need to test it. We've got a lot of data to look at in terms of what the customers want, but also what's working, not working for officers as well. So yeah, it's simply a review, just looking at how we can deliver a better service. We obviously want to encourage applicants to do pre-application advice. It means better schemes, less amendments. In order, we obviously want then a service that people want to engage with. So yeah, the review's been undertaken at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Wakeford.
If Doug will indulge me a final time, I'm conscious this is a right and proper, this is a discussion held in public session, and there have been references to income generation, and we understand the context of that, but I do wonder if it's worth sort of underlining, of course, as is implicit in what we've all commented, that that is primarily around ensuring that we can run a planning service that's sufficiently resourced to be effective, efficient, make decisions swiftly, give good service to residents and corporate customers, but also in making decisions swiftly support our economic development aspirations as well. And as I say, I think we'll do know that, but just to underline it rather than it being seen in isolation.
Thank you very much. I've got a question. Sorry, I've got a question. You've outlined DM processes improvement review. Is there anything that will impact directly on us as members? So, for example, you've talked about templates, and of course, our notes are obviously a template. Is there anything that might be affecting us as members?
Yeah, in terms of that, yes, Chair, we are currently, it has just about finished, it is ready to go, the revised template for DMC committee items. However, given what's likely to go back to October's committee, and what are the two items that are likely to go at this stage, we are proposing to leave the template as is at the moment, just for consistency. So it's likely to be, so that's October's committee. So like in November's committee, there'll be a new template which will have effectively an executive summary at the beginning and at the end where the recommendation is, there'll be the conditions listed in full. So condition number 1 and then the reason why, condition number 2 and then the reason why, just so we can make it easier and it can read better for members, just that we can refer to specific conditions that are on there that we're asking members to consider, approve or not, or if they want to tweak one, to make it easy for that discussion to be had and quicker, for want of a better word.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a final couple of points from me. On the pre-app service, I can't recommend it highly enough because it does, as Lewis is saying, does solve a lot of problems further down. Saves officer time, saves applicant time. I was in a meeting last week. The application had pre-app written all over it, should have taken place. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So the officer team have had to work extremely hard to help. It's a somewhat, I won't go into detail, somewhat controversial local application with funding involved. Applying for the pre-app service really is a good way forward, I think. And if it generates income, of course, so much the better. But I was just going to come to the recommendation about planning guidance on householder extensions, because I suspect for most people, their dealings with the planning department will be when they want to extend their house. We saw a lot of residents here tonight from a village, but generally I think people will probably not know a great deal about planning before they embark on that process, unless they happen to be very knowledgeable. So I think it's good we've got the tick list in place. I think that's an amber issue there, so possibly a little bit more work. I think we're looking at guidance for applicants to develop that and benchmarking, which I think is good, because I think probably most of our casework is people saying, I don't know what to do here. Why has my application been rejected? Well, there's a process to follow. So if we can streamline it, I think so much the better.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or feedback? Nope. So we'll move on to item 5 on our agenda, which is appeal decisions. And our planning service manager will tell us about that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Other than the first one, which Lewis kind of said is going to pick up, the refusals have all been successfully defended, and the second item, a cost application was batted away, as it were. So if I can hand over to Lewis just to update members, or just provide a little bit of commentary behind the appeal that was allowed for the one at Yaxley.
So the Yaxley appeal, which was for 115 dwellings outline planning permission. So last year it was refused for, I want to say 6 or 7 reasons for refusal. One was kind of around principal development, others were around highway safety, drainage, etc. A lot of insufficient information. As time moved on, obviously we found ourselves with a new MPPF at the end of last year. We found ourselves within tilted balance. As you know, when we go through appeals, similar to the discussion that we were just having earlier, reasons for refusal started to fall away. The appeal was going to be a public inquiry, so we engaged a barrister, and the barrister obviously is there to kind of advise us as we go. As always with planning applications, as things change in terms of context or policy, or even what we're looking to refuse it on, you should always reevaluate your position as you go along. One of the reasons for that is costs. You've got to make sure that we are actually got substantial reasons for refusal. In tilted balance, the test is quite high. It's got to be significant demonstrable harm. So where we found ourselves about a week before we're about to do what we call a case management conference, which is where we sit down with the inspector, the appellant and the barristers to basically discuss what the main issues are going to be at the public inquiry. We found ourselves with one reason for refusal. So following advice from our barrister, officers then decided that we couldn't contest the appeal anymore. It no longer met the test of significant and demonstrable harm, but just for that one reason for refusal, and therefore officers stepped back and didn't contest the appeal. So the public inquiry is more of a roundtable discussion. It still allowed people like the parish council and residents to come have their say, but instead of the 6 or 7 days, it only ran for 1 day. Within the appeal decision, the inspector said we made the right decision on reevaluating our position at that point of the appeal, and obviously we avoided getting costs against us as well. So I think the kind of message here is we made the right decision at the right time. but national policy changed. We became into tilted balance and reasons for refusal knocked away. So it's a similar kind of discussion what we were having earlier about members just being mindful of the implications, but also actually just looking at, can we still defend this as things change? But yeah, so that appeal was allowed for 115 dwellings in New Axley.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to thank those who have contributed to the discussions this evening and for the hard work that has been planning officers have put into writing the reports and presenting us to this evening. So with that, that's the end of our meeting.